Holy moly, that music was loud. Sorry about that. I was at his door yelling and he couldn't hear me. Alrighty, welcome. Welcome to Tales for Bookeemonsters. We will be reading chapter 5 of our Advent calendar reading, our 5th day of Advent. So what I will do is make the ambiance here full screen, and so I won't be a distraction, and we will see what's going on in Christmas at Glitter Peak Lodge. And I appreciate you guys. We'll do at the end, just say a quick good night, and then you guys can hopefully, if not already asleep, fall asleep to this bedtime story. Here we go. December 5. Ingrid looked at herself in the mirror. The green silk draped softly over her body. Vigard had helped her pick out the dress the last time she was in Oslo, at an exclusive shop she never would have set foot in on her own. Vigard and the shop assistant had practically clapped when she put the dress on, and she could see that it looked good on her. It accentuated her slim figure and toned arms, while the simple draped neckline and luxurious fabric created an elegant effect. But she could never get used to seeing herself in this kind of outfit. Pants and t-shirts, solid shoes, wool sweaters, anoraks. That type of clothing was more her style. Clothes you could work and walk in, not the kind of thing you had to send to the dry cleaner and worry about the sequins falling off. The woman staring back at her was tall and angular, with curly, sandy blonde hair that flowed down her shoulders. She had strong arms and long fingers with short nails. Her calves, which showed beneath the hem of her skirt, were slender but toned. She raised herself up on tiptoe, and her calves bulged even more. In high heels, both her muscles and her height became even more pronounced, so she tended to avoid heels. Besides, they were painful to walk in. Fredman had always preferred that she wear flats. He wanted to be the tallest in the relationship. Vigard, on the other hand, claimed that stilettos gave you power and a real beauty boost. "Keep your heels, head, and standards high," he said, quoting Coco Chanel. Ingrid had told him to try wearing 5-inch heels if he thought they were so sexy. Ingrid had never been much of a dress girl. Painful memories flashed through her head. Senior prom, her last year in high school, when she'd been convinced to wear a strapless dress and shimmering red fabric. Freddie Dolan, who was hanging outside the school with his gang, laughed when she arrived, saying she looked like an overgrown candy cane. The dress kept threatening to slip down over her almost completely flat chest, and she'd ended up sneaking into the arts and crafts room to tape it with double-sided tape, which caused a rash that lasted for days. Then there was the cocktail party at the Norwegian embassy in New Delhi, where she arrived in an expensive, newly purchased skirt. She'd forgotten how tight it was as she took the stairs to the roof terrace 2 at a time. She ended up with a rip up the back that she had to hide by borrowing a shawl from the ambassador, a stylish woman in her 60s, that Ingrid tied around her waist. Ouch. What good were clothes designed to inhibit your ability to move? Nice pants, simple stylish tops were pretty much her go-to when she was forced to go to parties. But these were new times with new expectations. If Glitter Peak Lodge was going to stand out on social media, the hotel manager had to put herself out there, Vigard said. Gorgeous photos of food and interiors were a given, but pictures of Ingrid in simple but elegant dresses were apparently also a must. "But they've only seen pictures of me in outdoor gear. No one is coming to Glitter Peak to see me in a dress," she said. "People should come to Glitter Peak to live out their fantasy," Vigard replied. "And that dream might involve anything from climbing to nature to food to peace and quiet to beauty and elegance. You have to show them that you don't need to choose. You can have it all." He pointed at the slogan he'd come up with for the hotel: "Glitter Peak, where all that glitters is gold." Well, she decided to do what needed to be done. She really was going to put more effort into being well dressed, Hence the shopping trips with Vigard that had resulted in a handful of dresses in her closet. Now she just needed to figure out what she was going to wear to dinner this weekend when Vigard and Pia P were coming to visit. And Thor. It would of course be hopeless to ask her grandmother for advice. Nana Borghild's standard answer was that bunad was best. For Constitution Day, confirmations, big birthdays, and Christmas, the Norwegian national costume was her go-to garment for any kind of celebration. She'd also told Ingrid what a bunad would be a stylish choice for festive occasions when she made her debut as manager of the hotel. Ingrid had tried her best not to scoff. She didn't want to hurt her grandmother's feelings. But the idea of waltzing around the hotel in a pile of brocade and silver was downright ridiculous, and it wouldn't exactly help anyone live out their fantasy either. She opened the smaller closet where her bunad was hanging inside two heavy garment bags, one for the embroidered wool skirt with an attached bodice, and one for the shawl and cape. There was a separate jewelry box for the silver brooches, solje, and cufflinks, and the belt and bunad purse with its large silver clasp. Ingrid always felt like she was playing dress-up when she wore a bunad, as though she was in a national romantic fantasy she had no desire to be a part of. Worse than that, it felt like she was dressing up like her own mother. Ingrid had inherited Angelina's bunad, which Borghild had embroidered for Angelina's confirmation. Nina Borghild wanted nothing more for Ingrid to wear it, and Ingrid could understand why. The loss of her daughter, all the love that Nana Borghild had put into the garment that Angelina had gotten to wear for far too many years. So Ingrid had agreed to wear the bunad for her own confirmation, as well as a few other occasions since then. Angelina had also been tall, so the garment had fit Ingrid without needing any adjustments, but it mostly stayed in the closet. It smelled like mothballs and sadness. She shut the closet door. She squirmed out of the green dress and laid it on the chair behind her. Then she looked in the mirror again, placing a hand on her stomach. Other women had often told her it was enviably flat, gesturing to their own rounder bodies. But a few years ago, when did it happen really? She'd apparently reached an age where a flat stomach had become a source of pity, while other women's round bellies and bulging breasts had become something they carried around with pride. Ingrid had never cared about this much, until suddenly she did. She walked over to the large wardrobe and tentatively pulled out a form-fitting blue dress that Vigard had also chosen. She held it up in front of her and met her own gaze in the mirror. Stop feeling sorry for yourself, she thought. You've had an incredible life, and it will be incredible again. Maybe. It could be pretty good, at least. And the start of her new life was this first winter season as manager of Glitter Peak Lodge. The encouragement from Vigard and David helped Ingrid believe, at least in some optimistic moments, that a miracle actually could happen, and that the family hotel would be able to survive in the years to come and not be swallowed up by the competitors who were constantly making offers to buy them out, especially during periods when the market was particularly difficult. And it had been difficult for as long as Ingrid could remember, maybe even always. When she'd left home, she hadn't been mature enough to get involved in that hotel business. She traveled out into the world, confident that her grandmother could handle both the practical operations and hotel finances. Surely Nana Borghild had always done so. It was only now, when she stood with her own feet planted firmly in all of the work, that she realized how difficult it must have been, how much her grandmother had kept from her, even though they were so close. Ingrid pulled the blue dress over her head and zipped it up the side. It fit nicely, but was it right for the occasion? Was it too short for a dinner party? Too tight? Was it more of a cocktail dress, perhaps? Vigard had tried to give her advice and tips on what was appropriate when, but she still felt unsure. Ingrid was terrified at the thought of Pia Filstrom being here to judge both her and the hotel, but Vigard was right. It would be good advertising for Glitter Peak if Pia liked it here. Pia would get the nicest room. It was on the top floor, but walking up all those stairs was good exercise. Maybe that was how they could sell it to her. Ingrid had stopped by today to check everything was dust-free and that the bedding didn't have a single wrinkle. The bathroom had a selection of products that Vigard had convinced Ingrid the hotel had to offer for sale. Glitter Peak birch soap and hand cream with heather extract. Wine, snacks, and flowers had been put in the room that morning as well. The evening's menu would be the same as on Christmas Eve. Pinnacle with Christmas sausages and mashed root vegetables. Opinions on what to serve to drink were divided, so there would be plenty to choose from. The traditional alternatives, beer and aquavit, would of course be available. Nana Borghild scoffed at the suggestion of wine with Pinnacle, but Ingrid wanted to balance the heavy fare with a nice Amarone. Maja favored the non-alcoholic malt beer they brewed at the hotel, or alternatively, a glass of fresh black currant juice. Ingrid wondered what Pia P would prefer. Champagne, perhaps? Fortunately, there was plenty of that in stock. Ingrid hoped that everything would go smoothly now, that she would manage to represent the hotel in a positive way and attract new guests. Deep down, she knew the dresses had little to do with it. That's not what people came to see. Traditionally, it was mostly hikers and climbers who came to Glitter Peak, and if they associated anything with Ingrid, it was her climbing career. They'd probably want to talk to her about expeditions and climbing tips, perhaps with the hope of joining a trip she led herself. So many hopes, so many things that could go wrong. She looked at herself in the mirror and pulled the zipper down. She took off the dress and hung it back up on the hanger, leaving it and the pale green silk dress to hang outside the closet door. She would go for the green one tomorrow, since hope was green after all. It was early evening, dinner had been eaten, and Sunny and Ingrid were carrying boxes of Christmas decorations down from the attic, where neither dry rot nor Cheetos were to be seen. They put them in the foyer. Ingrid opened one and pulled out a soft white blanket. She draped it over the table Alfred had carried up from the basement. "This'll be the snow." She pushed the table against the wall and set up the vases of spruce twigs that had been collected for the occasion. "And here's the forest." Borghild, who was on her way down to get something in the library, stopped on the landing and clutched her chest. It was all so familiar, the tableau taking shape in the foyer. She stood there watching Ingrid and Sunny. They were rummaging through boxes while Ingrid instructed Sunny on how she should set up the fairy tale forest. They placed small elves and skiers on the white blanket. Borghild knew every single figure. Hares and reindeer would also find their places. A whole forest of characters in miniature would teem between the trees. Setting up the winter forest was a cherished tradition, and Borghild remembered its humble beginnings well. It was the last Christmas when Angelina and Marius were still alive. Back then, they didn't usually keep the hotel open for Christmas, so the staff had been given the day off, and it was just Borghild, Angelina, Marius, and little Ingrid. To think that it was 30 years ago. Ingrid had been so excited, like most 3-year-olds around Christmas. She sprinted up and down the stairs and in and out of the rooms all day, looking forward to opening presents. To slow her down, her father had brought out a box of elf figurines he'd bought in a gift shop in Oslo. Ingrid gave every elf a name: Mrs. Claus, Mommy, Daddy, Theodore, Bjarn, and Poopy, and placed them between some spruce twigs that had been brought in as decoration. This was the forest where they lived, she explained, describing their life there with great enthusiasm. Then she asked where the elves' reindeer were. Marius had said they might come next Christmas. But the next Christmas, Angelina and Marius were gone, and a heartbroken Broghild had bought a reindeer for little Ingrid and the elves. Over the years, they'd been joined by many more figurines, animals and people, sleighs and houses. Borghild had made it a Christmas tradition to add one or more items to the collection each year. It had become her and Ingrid's little ritual, and as the collection grew, they'd found that the foyer was the best place to display them. A couple of guests had also stopped to admire the small display. Borghild watched as Ingrid chatted with them as she set up elves and adjusted the sleds. It was nice to see the glow in her granddaughter's cheeks when she occasionally managed to forget her worries. Borghild even saw some of the same eagerness in Ingrid as she herself had felt in her childhood. It had already been a long, dark winter, and there were many difficult days, but these glimmers of light gave her hope. For the first time in many years, Borghild felt that she was actually looking forward to Christmas. And that is the end of chapter 5. Happily a short one on a night of sprints. Have a very good night. Tomorrow we will read chapter 6. Good night. God bless.